Good afternoon, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission. Today, we're reviewing on-ramp 2021 fellowship proposals for the Greater Lafayette cohort. This is panel A, Music, Media, Literature, and Performing Arts. I'm Maya Michelson, Deputy Director. Today is August 3rd, 2021, and we are meeting on Zoom. We welcome all our applicants and guests who may be listening in today, and we'd like to remind you that you're muted for this review. And I would also ask that there's no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. Now, right now, we'd like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are in the state. And Ari, I'm going to ask you to start.
Okay, my name is Ari Beatty. I didn't say this earlier, but I am the Neighborhood Engagement Director at INRC in Indianapolis.
Thanks. Sally? Sally, you're muted. There you go.
There. Bad mouse skills. So yeah, I'm Sally Childs-Helton, and I'm also in Indianapolis. One of my jobs is I'm at Butler University, where I'm an archivist. I'm also an ethnomusicologist and have done some world music teaching. And after hours, I am a percussionist and drumming and music improvisation facilitator.
Thanks, Sally. Trisha.
Hi, my name is Trisha Marshall. I'm the Director of Educational Programming for a local theater company and a performer in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And Nick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Gonzalez. I am the Community Engagement and Education Manager for the Stanford Symphony. Actually based in Stamford, Connecticut, but was born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and got my schooling done in Bloomington, Indiana. So still Indiana at heart.
Thanks, Nick. And Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Travisser, and I see staff and here to just listen and take lots of notes.
Thanks, everybody. Now we'll get started. If I take a deep breath, here we go. This panel today is structured to give feedback that will help the applicant strengthen their fellowship project to advance their career. First, we're going to, sorry, I just lost my script, so I'm going to the paper one. So here we go, technology. The discussion will also help IAC staff identify any important modifications applicants may be required to make to their fellowship project before moving forward. So first, I'll announce the application we'll review. I'll ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide advice to strengthen the fellowship project, focusing on the 3 evaluation criteria from their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications don't need to be recapped since everyone's read them. Just provide your comments. After the first reader's finished, I'll ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or different comments. We're not looking for consensus here. We want to hear everyone's viewpoint and opinion. We want the applicant to receive the best possible advice from this great panel of panelists that we have. So we will then open up the discussion for everyone after the first and second reader. And we want to hear, again, your perspective on the application. No need to repeat something if someone's already said it, but if you have a new, additional, or differing viewpoint, we'd love to hear it. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, they will be placed in the waiting room during the duration of that panel review, and then they will come back out for the next review of the application. Finally, once the application has been fully reviewed by the panel, we'll ask the panel to take a couple of minutes to update their comments and scores in the online system. And it's common for recommendations and scores to change based on the discussion, which is why we do this. The changes save automatically in the system, so you don't need to do anything aside from saving. So are there any questions? All right, seeing none, then let's begin. Our first application is Ballard, and Sally has a conflict of interest, so she will be placed in the waiting room. Great, thank you, Anna. Nick, you are the first reader on this application.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to start off by saying I thought this application was very strong, both in all the areas, goals, feasibility, and community engagement. The goals were clearly outlined with, I think there was like 7 different goals the applicant had, detailing both the project, how it got to where it is, what the current project is, and how it's going to advance. I really like with the budget that it balanced out, and also it's showing in-kind donations, just showing how much support that this project has behind it. And with community engagement, I thought that the applicant is really showing the breadth of who they're all engaging in terms of their communities with mental health professionals and educational institutions. My only one criticism of the application would just be there's so many great details and so many amazing things on this project. It's just making sure that each of the areas, when describing your main work, describing how it relates to your long-term goals, just make sure it's concise and straight to the point. And but that's just such a small criticism, that because the rest of the application was great. So that's all I had to say on this application.
Thanks, Nick. Ari, you are second reader here.
Thank you. So the only thing I have to add here is just with community engagement. I would be interested to know the intended community impact outside of the educational circuit. So just the average person, but everything sounded great besides that.
Great, thank you, Ari. So I'll now open the floor. Any additional comments, thoughts related to this application? Great, all right, thank you. So take a couple of minutes, if you would, to update any comments you might have or your score, and then let me know. As soon as I sort of get the sense that everyone's done, we'll let Sally back in and move on to the next application. Okay, yeah, thumbs up. All right. Are you good? Okay, great, thanks. All right, Anna, if you would let Sally back in. All right, because she's our first reader, so she is really important of this process. All right, welcome back, Sally. Our next application is On-Ramp 2021 Bullock. Sally, you are first reader, so if you get us kicked off. Sally, you're muted.
Done. Okay. So to begin with, I thought Manon did just a beautiful job when she was describing her creative work. I found it to be a really powerful and very clear statement of not only her art, but very much where she's coming from. I did think, though, that she could improve her statement regarding her long-term creative or business goals by giving a more extensive treatment, by giving more detail. And she starts off with an absolutely wonderful sentence, but again, I think the section needs to have some more detail filled in, including things like how she plans to create social awareness and community engagement, who specifically will be her audience, who will be her collaborators, events and activities that will provide opportunities for local awareness and community engagement. Her project-specific goals, I thought, were very strong, but I would like to see more of those included in big picture concepts, just to build a stronger idea of what her goals are. Her project goals really build on all of her strengths and experience in housing stability and poetry and social justice activism. So I think her fellowship project is going to be an excellent pilot project. And because of her success, because of her prior experiences, I know she's going to be successful as this. She's going into this project from a very strong place. So I think it's a wonderful match for her experience, both in the work world and as an artist. Her project strikes me as being very feasible. She already has her team in place. She's very wisely made plans for alternative ways to do her community talkbacks online if COVID makes it difficult or unsafe to do these in person. And also by doing these talkbacks online, she may be able to increase the reach of her project. But in order to meet her budget goals, I think it would help to pay attention to the fact that the projected cash expenses and projected cash outcomes are not the same, and the figures are off by about $1,250. So correcting that and then breaking down the sources of income and indicating where the money beyond the grant money is coming from, I think would be very useful to a grant reader. Her engagement, the fact that she's including these talkbacks, both with the communities that are being impacted and the people and organizations that are working towards solutions, I think is an incredibly powerful combination. So she's bringing communities together that often don't get a chance to talk to each other. She makes a gorgeous statement about communal art having a reflective component. And she speaks about doing this work at the intersection of art and activism. It's clear to me she fully understands and embodies her work in the idea of communal art as an activity for an empowerment and social and personal change. The one other comment I would make is that I would urge her to reformat her artistic resume. And she has several publications that are both in print and online that I would pull out and put under publications. She has some awards she might want to put under other sections. And also, it would be useful to a reader to have more information on some of her performances. So it includes the organization the performance was for, the location, any dates and information like that. But overall, yeah, this is going to be, I think, an incredibly meaningful and empowering project for all participants. And I wish her and her project well. I think this is going to be impressive work.
Thanks, Sally, very much. Nick, you are second reader here.
Yes, I'd like to just echo a lot of what Sally said, just expanding upon a couple of things. I agree. Very clear vision and very ambitious and impactful project, but just could use more details. For example, they could have said of like how doing the tour will allow them to reach new audiences like they haven't before, or like the conversations will be the first time it's presented in this area. It just shows how detailed and tactical of the things that we're looking for, so that it relates back to the larger vision. Also with the feasibility, it's just always helpful to have a timeline. It's very clear that the applicant has all the parts. I'm just a little unclear of when this is all happening. And then my only other comment with community engagement is just, I'm a little unclear if community engagement was used before the project got to where it is. I'm kind of inferring that it has, just based on the type of work that they're doing. And they're very clearly stated how it's community engagement is part of their work now and in the future. But I could have used a little more of just how community engagement was used to get to this point. But all that being said, I think it's very impactful and fantastic project. So well done on the applicant for coming up with this great project.
All right, thanks, Nick. Now I'm going to open the floor to other comments from other panelists about this project. Seeing none, I'm going to ask you to update your comments and scores in the online system. And then when you've done so, we will move on to the next applicant. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Thanks, everybody. Next is on-ramp 2021 Busari. Tricia, you're the first reader on this, so I'd ask you to get us started if you would.
Sure thing. As I looked through this application, I saw lots of really good information. I'd like to point out just a couple of things that I would like to see as a panelist if I was reviewing. One of those things would be taking a look at the number of examples that are given. I think they were pretty extensive. And I wrote in my notes, is this too much for a panelist to view? And you might want to take into consideration the amount of time that it takes for someone to look at your projects and highlight especially what you want them to see. That way you know exactly what every panelist is looking at, and they know exactly what every panelist is looking at. That's a good note for everybody. I do really appreciate what the project summary has to say, but as it is written as bullets, it may not look exactly as the artist would wish in an announcement type of publication. So they may consider turning that into a sentence instead of bullet points, but it does have good information there. As far as feasibility, I believe under budget, there was a little discrepancy, and I think we noted this maybe before, but those budget numbers should zero out. So I believe it was under the maybe in kind, I'm trying to find it, where the numbers weren't quite matching. So be careful that as you see your expected income and your expenses would be the same amount. I think that the numbers match actually, but it was like within the description, there was a mix up there. There's one more thing. Oh, I really liked the plan to use local sites for the parts of the video because that really is community engagement. I'm wondering if there could be some meet the artist party, like a release party, as part of the culmination. That wasn't something that was mentioned, but it was just an idea that I had. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Tricia. Nick, you're second reader here.
Yes, thank you. One thing I just wanted to echo was just that opening sentence of like, what is it, the project overview, not just bullets, but I always say like that's the first thing that we read. So make sure it's really exciting, because if I don't get excited reading that, it doesn't set a good tone for reviewing it. So I do think that the applicant does have a great project. It's just making sure that they do everything they can to put it all out there in the best way possible. Also with the budget, just we're just noting where the timeline is, even if it's just an estimate, especially with video production. I'm sure there might be some variables as to when it happens, but even just a sample timeline of when it could occur. And then when it comes to community engagement, one thing I kind of want to maybe provide a different perspective on is just making sure the applicant can state why they're choosing certain businesses and certain landmarks, because something I was getting a little worried about is if it's sponsorship versus community engagement when it comes to like just promoting a business on your application. So I said, like, you could have said, you chose this landmark because this relates to the type of things in your video, or highlighting certain areas within the communities that you're wanting to reach. So just making sure that that's really clear, that someone doesn't read it as sponsorship, because that's two different areas, or at least someone could interpret it as two different areas. But overall, one other note about the budget, and I don't know if this is a concern for anyone else, just in their description of producing the video, I believe they said like they're trying to, they estimated 1,000 for just one song, and they're doing 2 for 1,400, which is less than what they did the first time. So it just makes me a little hesitant. I think if they didn't even tell me the first time they did it was 1,000, I might have been like, oh, okay, so they planned 700 per. But it makes me a little cautious. Again, maybe they, if they would have explained like, oh, well, you're getting a deal on the videographer's time, that might have made me a little more comfortable. It just made me a little hesitant when reading that. So that was all the comments I had.
Thanks, Nick. I'm gonna open it up to the floor for any additional comments that folks might have on this application.
Yeah, I would like to add a little bit about the resume and suggest that Idris creates a separate artist resume instead of his standard work resume. There are a few items in there that I think he could include on his artist resume for his jobs in radio and as a multimedia manager, because those do apply to his artistic experience and goals. But again, having those two things being very separate, especially for those of us who have day jobs that may not be artistic. And also in general, anytime that anybody's writing grants, business proposals, media releases, things like that, it always helps to have at least one or more people to read them, to go over them, to make sure it makes sense, to make sure that the grammar is correct, that it's easily understood by someone who might not have a lot of information outside of your particular area of expertise. But I love the fact he's proving by filming Afrofusion videos in Goshen that you can work locally and globally at the same time. And I think it's going to be a fascinating project.
Great, thank you, Sally. Anyone else? Any other comments? Great. All right, we'll take a couple of minutes, if you would, to just update your scores and comments in the online system. And we'll move on to the next application, and that is On-Ramp 2021 Detweiler. Ari, I believe you're the first reader there, so.
Yeah. So I thought this was really cool as a former, well, I don't want to say former, but I played violin for a long time. So I just love engaging around classical music. I think that it's, I don't know, not ignored, but it's just not as popular, as widespread. So I really liked this application. So I'm just going down the list here, their goals. I think the goals are right on point. I think they spelled everything out very clearly, how they're wanting to do this and how this is going to clearly further their career and their work as an artist. As far as feasibility, I think that all of the points were explained very well. And let's see, and then with community engagement, it's just very clear the project is going to accelerate the classical music community locally for them, as well as engage other communities around classical music. So I think it's very clear, and I don't have any, sorry, I don't really have anything besides, yay, this is awesome.
That's great, thanks, Ari. Sally, you're a second reader here.
Yeah, so, I'm a classically trained percussionist, so I got really excited about taking contemporary percussion music out into places people normally don't find it. So again, yeah, the goals, pilot project. As a pilot project, it makes perfect sense to me. A little bit of feedback about feasibility, because this is going to be music that will be played in venues you don't normally expect to find classical music or classical percussion. It might be useful to market the group more as a band, more like you would a jazz group or something like that, and use a website and fan-based marketing to get and advertise shows. The only potential problem I see is a logistic one, and this is because I've been there, is finding venues that can hold a bunch of percussion equipment, because marimbas are 7 and 8 feet long, and you can only get so many of those in a stage area. So it might be one of those things where you have to build your show playlist for any particular venue based on how much space you've got. I mean, that's just purely logistical, but I've been on my share of postage stamp stages, and it gets interesting. The other thing I was thinking about with your community engagement might be to, as you mentioned, building a donor base that would help the performing group become more financially stable, using something possibly like the Patreon model. So donors would get recordings or goodies or other things. And in terms of making this a sustainable business, as it were, again, I would encourage the applicant to think outside of the box, beyond school and library gigs, look at festivals, outdoor events, art shows, museums, wineries, places like that, that often have live music. But again, it's almost selling this like a band, which is why I'm including that. But I think it's a wonderful vision, and I wish him all the success in the world.
Thanks, Sally. Open the floor. Additional comments from anybody?
I have a couple of additional comments, and I also work in the symphonic space. So I just wanted to say, doing these types of projects are something I'm really keen about looking at. And so I think that this person is right on with looking at alternative venues that are not the traditional spaces. So I just wanted to start off by saying, good on this applicant for doing that. I also thought this application was really great. And so the comments I have are kind of just like those little things that might take it over the edge for, because at least in the symphonic world, some people could ask, why are you doing this? Why can't the symphony do this? And I know as it relates to community engagement, one thing they mentioned is that like you want to involve more musicians. I just wanted to know, is there a way that they can prove that the musicians are the ones asking to do this type of work? Because that might then show, oh, doing more employment, some economic contributions there. Also just addressing needs of musicians. One thing that was a little unclear about was their connection with the Elkhart Symphony. Is that a new relationship or is that an ongoing relationship? And how does their work potentially either provide something different that audiences are getting, or are they combining forces in the future? And then the only other comment would be just, I think in the community engagement aspect, they mentioned relating to schools, but I didn't see it anywhere else in the project description. So just making sure it doesn't appear like an afterthought because you just threw it in at the last part, making sure it's within all aspects of the application. But like I said, I thought this was great. And just showing how they're doing this and not anyone else is a great way to show that you have that you're hitting a different area than everyone else in the area. So great job.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else have any other additional comments for this applicant? Okay, hearing none, if you take a second just to update comments and scores in the online system. All right, next one is on-ramp 2021 Douglas. Trisha, I believe you're first reader there.
That is me. I'm getting there. All right. The first note that I have is that this project summary, which is a very nicely written paragraph, was found twice in the application. So I would consider not using it in the project summary. It is very well placed when it's found later on. But this part of this part of the application should be exactly about this project, specifically about this project, I should say. Otherwise, I felt like the CV and the representative work were fantastic, and I was excited to see this this project planned out. I am not a percussionist, but I have high regard for percussionists, especially the ones that wait and wait and wait and then play the triangle. They're my favorites to watch. As far as community engagement, I think I skipped over feasibility, sorry. I really would like to see more detail in that feasibility section under the planning of the project. It looked to me like there was some brainstorming that had happened, but that the details hadn't really been laid out specifically. And in my experience, saying you're going to do something in a month or something is brainstorm level. And I'm looking for a little more detailed description. And it's possible that I saw so much detail in others that it kind of bled into my view of this application, but I still think it's valuable to really time things out specifically and be very detailed, especially when you're asking for money. And this is, this is a great opportunity to start this type of work, but I assume that you'll be going through lots and lots of grant applications in the future. So get used to doing more detail. And then as far as community engagement, I thought that there was something said about being asked back, and that would kind of show that the information would, or that the experience was valuable. But I'm thinking about more detail than that. So how do you hear directly from those who've attended and those who are participating? Could there be some type of form that gets filled out, or some type of online review system, or a follow-up email to those who participated? Something that gives you more detail than just, oh, we got asked back for the next year. And that is about all I have.
Thanks, Tricia. Nick, it's on you.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of the same comments, so I won't echo those. One of my bigger questions that I kind of had was in the budget. I really like that they recognize that they needed help for a marketing to do that aspect of the job. It's important to know what skills that you have and what skills you need to hire on. One thing I would just caution the applicant, or ask the applicant to think a little more of, is kind of what that marketing person is going to do. Because I think in the descriptions, it said that it was that the applicant needs to build relationships with community members, but that fell under the marketing specialist job. So just making sure that that's work that either both of you should be doing, or more that you should be doing, and making sure that it's clear to me that it's not really, you're not sending someone else to do that work that you should be doing. And I wasn't super clear about that, but also I also appreciated that they are hiring a marketing person to help them with those, and then learning the skills so that that person can do it themselves in the future. That was my one biggest comment, aside from echoing everything that was already said.
Thanks, Nick. Any additional comments on this application?
I do have a few things, simply because this is work that I have done and am still doing. And I'm so thrilled to see that somebody else is going to be doing this work in Indiana. I realized I was familiar with Julian's work because I have his Rhythm Quest Excursions album, and it rocks. So I would highly recommend it. It's a very fun and intricate CD. The one comment in terms of goals that I noticed was, it almost sounds like Julian is doing this work altruistically, or doing it for the sake of improving and enriching people's lives. And whereas this is why we do this in our hearts and souls, but you got to pay the rent. So I would recommend, saying so that if the intent is to make this a sustainable business, to earn a certain amount of money, then to please make it clear that this is intended to be an ongoing business. And a quick comment about the resume, even though I think it is very nicely laid out, to highlight education and training and things like that. I would have loved to have seen a section in there on the score and CD and video publications, highlighting those, possibly with links wherever possible. And this would include Julian's compositions being performed by other people, because I think this is a big part of what he does and could give him a lot of credibility for people who might be interested in hiring him to come do drum and dance facilitation. But yeah, I think he's incredibly well placed to do this work. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, incredibly important work, especially in our current cultural environment where people need to be so badly reconnected to local and global communities.
Great, thank you, Sally. Great comments. Any additional comments on this application? If not, if you would finalize your comments and scores in the online system. We will move on here in just a second. Let's see, Sally, if you're ready.
Yes, ma'am.
Next, all right, next is On-Ramp 2021 Elliott. Sally, you are first reader.
Okay. Yeah, I think Everin's goal statements are really impressive, both for the fellowship project and the larger career goals. Things are clear and concise. It's easy for me to see the long-term career goals as well as the project goals. And again, it makes it very clear how this project is going to literally create that on-ramp to a larger set of career goals. I will say, I did similar work for a number of years with a group called Theater of Inclusion that worked with people with visible and invisible disabilities, as well as professional artists, dancers, musicians, etc. And it's extremely powerful work, and everyone knows the power of engaging people through the creative process, through play. And the fact that everyone has a very large national network of support going on with theater of the oppressed, I think also makes this project be really feasible. Everyone has a large number of collaborators and potential collaborators, many of whom are well established in the Indianapolis and central Indiana area that are already doing some aspects of the work. And so I feel that there's excellent networking and mentoring there. I think the timeline is realistic, as is the budget. There is one very minor query I've got. There's a $500 rental fee for the Irvington Lodge, and I'm wondering what event that's for. Is it going to be for one event or several events? Would it be used for rehearsals or a performance? One practical point is everyone mentions working on college campuses and with college students, and it looks like the timeline might be moving into late April and May, and to keep in mind that students are slammed with exams and they leave campus in early May. So that's something else I think to consider. But again, everyone's education, training, and experience is going to translate directly into this project. And again, it's going to be successful. Community feedback. Again, everyone really understands that the sustainability of this project and future work is totally dependent on community buy-in and engagement. So the goal of creating a self-sustaining community doing the work, even after everyone may step out of it, I think is also, it's a very powerful goal, and I think it can be done if it's built carefully. And I know I've been talking about resumes a lot, but I think everyone's resume, again, very eye-catching, very simple, and it still conveys a lot of really important information. So I thought it was very, very well done. And again, I think this is a very well-written application. It engenders a lot of confidence in the reader that the writer will go on to have a successful project and a career to follow.
Great, thanks, Sally. Ari, you are our second reader.
So I agree with everything Sally mentioned. I like the look of this application. I think there's a lot of promise here, so I'm very excited for what they're going to bring to the community. The only thing I wanted to add is just in community engagement, I would love to see how this applicant will like recruit people from the community to be engaged. Like I know, like they mentioned, the community is the project. Excuse my 1-year-old. But just how are you going to get people like excited about it, and what is the key, and is it specific to the east side? Because they did mention doing stuff in Irvington. So I just didn't know, but I do think there's a lot of promise here.
Thanks, Ari. I'll open it up to everyone. Additional comments? Add to this application.
I just wanted to add that I thought the applicant also did a fantastic job of backing up their information with data and case studies, like from Americans from the Arts and how this was done in New York. I also really appreciated how they didn't just state how this was effective in New York, how they plan to take that and make it successful in Indianapolis. I think it was Indianapolis, right? I could be wrong on the city, sorry. But I just thought that just makes a strong case for your work, having that data, and also just showing how you're adapting it for your community. So great job.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Any additional comments? Okay, seeing none, if you'd finalize your comments and scores in the online system. Okay, we'll move on then. Next is on-ramp 2021 Flutterjohn. Tricia, you're first reader there.
Yes, I am. All right. I just have to say from the very beginning, one of the first things I would do is go click on their link, whatever the link they gave us, and I would just let it play while I was reading through the applications. And this was my favorite one. I couldn't read. I had to stop and had to watch the whole TED Talk video. So excellent job showing us exactly what you do and what it is that you want to do more of. I was intrigued and I was like Googling and I couldn't stop researching. I was so excited. So hopefully I will get to participate in something featuring this artist. I don't know, sometime in the future, hopefully. I really liked the idea that what we're trying to get to is like Sally said earlier, like we have to pay the bills, right? And so as artists, sometimes we don't get to do what we really want to do because it can't sustain our lives. And I felt like this project really lays out the reason why it's important for us to have on-ramp and to have the Indiana Arts Commission. And so it just seemed so solid to me. It just showed me exactly why we do what we do. So I felt like the goals were clear. And again, that YouTube video was fantastic. I was unclear of what was meant by engaging collaborator, and that was under the budget. So just be more clear. I think it has some good reasoning in my mind, but it wasn't clear in the project specifically what that was for. And because we're looking at web design to further the goal of your work or to further reach people with your work, that engaging collaborator, it just stuck out to me as like, this doesn't quite make sense, or what is it exactly for? Also under budget, there is something noted as design, but is this going to be a one-time fee? I believe this was, there was something mentioned about having, sorry, I should have made a note about this, but having training on how to continually update your website, but I wasn't sure if that training was going to be enough over time, and if the design was going to just be a surface design, or if you were going to need some more help with the design. And I realize that this is a time sensitive. Maybe it would just be design in this year. And then there is a word that says contingency in the budget, and I want to know what the contingency is. Just again, be more specific. one more thing. I'm looking specifically at community engagement here and trying to open my mind to what community engagement means, because as a performer, I see that performing is the engagement. But when I saw her performance, and it's not, I mean, it's more therapy, it helped me to understand that connecting with more people is how this type of artistic work gets to more people, right? The connection, the networking. And so I was challenged in my own thinking when I first looked at the goal of the project. I was like, well, this kind of looks like a business project, but it made more sense to me as I continued on looking through her detailed application, that it is about connecting more people to the work and more community engagement overall. I hope that my second reader has more information and can speak more eloquently than I do.
Thanks, Tricia. Sally, I think your second reader here. Sally, you're muted.
I'm going to make myself big notes that say unmute before speaking. Yeah, I totally agree with Tricia's comments. I thought very, very nicely put together application. And again, that the applicant is incredibly qualified and experienced to do exactly what she intends to do. But getting that website in place, I think, is really going to make a world of difference in her being able to take this and make this a sustainable business. In terms of feasibility, I do have one question, and that has to do with website security, because this site will be attracting people who are considering movement and dance therapy, which can be incredibly successful for the right people. And again, it's very powerful. I've seen it work with some people. It's all but miraculous. So what precautions are being made to make sure that potential clients and actual clients can use the site securely? There's a mention that the website will provide visitor analytics, and I'm wondering if any of that information might allow people to be personally identified, or might a hacker be able to trace contacts back to specific computers? And I'm not sure where HIPAA rules apply and how this can be accommodated by the website and further storage and backup. So that security piece is something that I think might need to be addressed, because this is a therapeutic business. And again, Tricia noted in terms of sustainability about thinking who's going to be maintaining the website and analytics after the project period is over. Who will be responsible for upgrades and security and things like that. So those technical and potentially legal issues, I think, could be addressed a little more closely if they haven't already been considered by the applicant. And yeah, I think that's about all I have to say, other than I think this is going to be a really successful launch, and that once the website is set up, then our applicant will be able to get on out into the community and start doing her work. But I feel like her project community, will include her 5 collaborators who will give her pre-launch feedback. And of course, she's going to have a very close relationship with the person who designs her website. And that relationship, I think, is going to be the most important. So yeah, I'm really excited about seeing how this moves into the future.
Thanks, Sally. So I'll open the floor, see if anyone has any additional comments on this application.
I just want to echo the contingency comment and maybe provide some ways that they can figure out how that works. So with contingency, it might be helpful if the contingency is related to one of your items above, you could always pad those numbers a little. You know, it says $96 for hosting and the annual hosting platform premium for WordPress. You could just make that $100 to make it round even. You know, you don't have to get super detailed on these numbers as long as it's not like, a huge difference. I've always found that, padding them a little is helpful, or you could just explain what the contingency is. So just two ways you might want to think about explaining contingency.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this one? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask folks to finalize their comments and scores in the online system. And while you're doing that, want to poll a group as to whether or not folks would like to take like a 5-minute, got to get a drink of water sort of break. Folks okay with taking a break, or do you want to push through? I personally am on team break, but can certainly be talked out of it. So are we okay with taking 5? All right, let's take 5, which means that we are back here at 3:25. Does that work for everybody? Super. All right. All right, welcome back, everybody. We will resume our panel review. Next application for review, on-ramp 2021 Greenlee. Ari, you are the first reader there.
Yes, so I feel like I should be speaking directly to the applicant. I've not been doing that. So sorry, Greenlee, because you are awesome. I think that you've really got a great start with this project. I love the idea that people are wanting to create websites for their projects. As a journalist and a marketing person, it's obviously the best way to get your business and ideas out there. I really like how in, let's see. I love how with this goal, they have like a team, like content advisors. They have people from the dance community that are going to really keep them accountable for content, make sure that this is representative of the dance community, because they did mention, you did mention that, there's a lot of, not segregation, but there's a lot of separate groups, which happens a lot in our artist community in Indy, and I'm sure everywhere else. As far as feasibility, I think that you've broken down the project into phases and have a rough timeline, which is right on track. Obviously, you can't have everything right now, but at least for me, rough timeline is good for me. And as far as community engagement, I mean, like I mentioned, even back to having a panel to see the content you're adding, it's very clear that you care about community. And so I think this is great. I don't have anything else to add.
Thanks, Ari. Trisha, you're a second reader.
Oh no, I don't have much to add either. I agree with what Ari said. Very good comments. And I do believe that there's a lot of good information. And I think the only comment that I would add is under community engagement, this was my comment. You're telling us lots of stories, but can you connect those stories to how your website will make a difference? I think that could be a really key point when people come to your website. How do you grasp them and pull them in? One of the things I really loved was that quote, fairy godmother of dance. And I thought, well, maybe there's something in that. Maybe there's like a magic wand or something that kind of draws people in. Even as an adult, I like those kind of things that engage me in what a website is offering instead of just black and white, blah, 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 blah. So I know that that's design elements, but maybe there's something that could be mentioned. And, I wasn't really a dancer as a young girl, and it didn't really enter my life until I got to be an older teen. But I think that children are very web savvy, if that's the way I should say it. And this might be a really great way to connect with kids in that way as well.
Thanks, Trisha. I'll open the floor. Any other comments on this applicant?
I do have a couple of queries, if I may. Under the the goals. Again, it's not really clear to me that the website project is going to potentially lead to a business platform and something that is financially self-sustainable. So if this is going to be a part of it, that this actually does become a business, if it follows some kind of a subscription model or something like that, that if that could be clarified, I think that would help the reader understand the goals a little bit better. Under feasibility, I also wonder how realistic it might be for the applicant to be the only webmaster after the site is up and running, because there's a lot of duties there. There's troubleshooting, platform and plugin upgrades, security, there's all that fun stuff. So I would ask the applicant to consider having one or two other people who can be backup or who can act as emergency, who can help to maintain the site and update the content and software as needed, because that can be a huge job. That can at times just be overwhelming and stand in the way of the applicant being this advocate and enabler and connector for all the dance communities in the area.
Thanks, Sally. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I would ask you to just finalize. Oh, okay. Bree has a 1-year-old too. Nice to know. Finalize your scores, if you would, in the online system, and finalize any comments as well. And then we will move on to the next application. All right, everybody good? Looks like it. All right. Next, on-ramp 2021, Janelle. Sally, you are our first reader.
Yeah, boy, the idea of having a tax specialist to help artists it's wonderful. I think all of us have struggled over the years trying to find a tax person who actually understands us and what we do and how we do it and why our taxes are so weird. The goals, I think the goals are clear, and it's clear how the project goals will help the applicant reach her long-term goals. A couple small tweaks. It may help to add into the project goals completing the last 2 SCE exams that Kimberly mentioned, and did request money for them. So adding those materials back into the project goals to make it more clear what's going on specifically. I think just that consistency in grant writing, where you've got the right information in the right place, and that things reflect each other, so that your goals and your budgets are all reflecting each other accurately. In terms of feasibility, I think the budget is feasible and realistic, but I do have a couple of queries about the timeline. Kimberly says she'll have her SCE exams completed in October, but she talks about starting her first cohort of basically for the pilot project of running people through her tax program before that. But the second cohort start date, by that point, she will be credentialed. So I don't know if she might need to reschedule her first cohort to train also after she becomes credentialed, because technically she could be giving tax advice. So I don't know if there's any legal issues in that. So if she's credentialed after she runs both of her cohorts, that might be the safest thing to do. And also she may want to add the SCE exams to her timeline since she references those throughout the grant. The other thing I would like for her to do in terms of her community engagement, first of all, I think the idea of doing a free sort of do-it-yourself tax session as a public service is an incredible gift, to the arts community, as well as a way for her to find new clients. So that's a wonderful 2-for-1. She also mentioned using technology to reach the artist community. So there's the potential of forming an online community again that she may want to think about. I would like to encourage her to create a new resume for her artist reboot business that highlights not only her artistic work, but also her certification and tax work. So it needs to be a resume that makes her look as trustworthy as possible. And so by including some of the tax work and that certification, I think would be very useful. The other thing that I would mention is she lists productions that she's been in, but again, listing theaters or groups that performances have been done with, the dates and locations, the length of the runs, and then just being more specific, giving dates of films and shows that she's done, dates she studied with various teachers and studios, so that it's so that a person who is interested would have a better idea of her overall training. But I think it's a really, really exciting idea. And again, I wish her all the luck in the world, because lots of us would love to see this business be launched successfully.
Thanks, Sally. Ari, you are our second reader.
I think the project is awesome. Really needed for our artist community, and I don't have anything else to add. Sally hit all the points.
Great, thanks. I'll open it up. Any other comments on this one?
I just had a couple of comments. The first one, just I also agree with everyone that this is a great need within the arts community. I just think that for those of us not in the arts community, if like ever a grant or this application is proposed for someone else who's not in the arts community, having some data just to support that this is a need that we have. I think all of us are here within the arts community and we understand that, but if she wants to take this proposal to people outside of it, that would just be really helpful to have. And something else that just would just be helpful for me to know is just how the person or how the applicant got to the salary that they listed in the budget. I have no problem paying people for their time. It's just making it clear that they're working this many hours at this rate to get to that number, because right now it's really arbitrary. And when it takes up 75% of the budget, it can make someone be like, how did you get to that number? Again, pay yourself for the work that you do. Just make sure it's really clear how you got to that number. But other than that, I also echo how great of a service this is.
Thanks, Nick. Any other comments? All right, if seeing none, if you would update your comments and your scores in the online system. Just a second to do that. So folks have done that. Next, we're going to move on to on-ramp 2021 Jeffers. Nick, you are first reader on that.
Sorry, just pulling it up, the application up. Yeah, I thought this was a really good project. And I really like their, one of the strong things about this application is showing how the applicant is the right person to do this job and how that they have the right background to help build up this online community and help people with their tools. The one thing there's just a little missing for me. It's just there could be just more explanation of things. Like things feel like everything's very brief. I think I mentioned this in another application of just like, this is your time to get us excited, show us how passionate you are about the work. And I'm kind of feel like I'm missing that a little from these and how it connects to the long-term goals. Not to say that it's not important work, but it's just a little more description about that would be helpful for me. I don't know if this was anyone else's feeling at all, but I just felt like the person is putting so much time and energy into this project, and it just felt, with research, the course material, syllabus writing, teaching platform marketing, I just kind of questioned why the budget is only $2,000. I mean, it's okay if the budget goes larger as long as income and expenses are they zero out at the end. So I just would say to the applicant, if there is more things to this application, don't feel free to add that in there, just because it just seems like such a huge thing. And then the only other question I had was just with community engagement. It's just I'm a little unclear about how the applicant's current constituents are being engaged. I know they have like such a strong social media platform, but I couldn't read in the application how that translates to their inputs are being provided in the creation of the material, why this course is necessary, just essentially stuff to prove it. I'm kind of inferring that from the application, but if you could more explicitly state it on the application, that would just make me as a reviewer be more confident in your application. But I think they do have a good starting point of like stating their statistics on Instagram, like saying how many people they reach, the audience size. It's always a good number to have that I haven't seen on many applications. So they're already doing good in that regard. Just drive it home. And that was all the comments I had.
Thanks, Nick. Ari, your second reader.
So a few of my comments here. I think this project is needed and it has a great start, but I do wish that there was a little more. Like I wish there was more detailing why this digital art course. Why should I pick this? And what's the purpose for creating this? And why should folks choose it? Just a little more details, like Nick mentioned, to get us a little more excited about it. I think the feasibility is good. I liked that part of it. It was pretty clear to me. My only other comment is what I indicated for community engagement, which is just how could this applicant explore how this program would be meaningful? For example, could this be available to young students? Is there an opportunity to give back? How could this applicant strengthen their own community connections to continue to grow their brand? And just thinking of like organizations in their local community could be helpful. But that's all I have.
Thanks, Ari. Open the floor. Other comments for this applicant? Yes, Tricia.
So I wrote a lot under these under career goals, or the goals section. I guess I was feeling like sometimes the instruction was to write something like a branding statement for the project, and that to me was a little off. And then the long-term career goal is like the big picture. That was okay. I read into it because I was reading other things, but then when we get to that section that says, what's the goal for this project? It says, be as specific as you can about what you want to happen as a result. And there's one sentence. And I need more than that. I need at least one paragraph, right? So just make sure you're paying attention to exactly what the application asks for and tailor each answer to the type of question that you're getting per section. And I don't need to be any more detailed than that because that's the detail, right? Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Tricia. Any other comments?
The only other thing I would add to that is I still didn't get a good feeling for what students would be specifically learning, like skill set, or what skills they would have after they had taken the class. And as a reader, I would find that information very useful.
Thanks, Sally. Good discussion. Any other comments? Seeing none, if you would finalize your scores in the online system and Now, let's see, our next applicant, we've got a conflict of interest, Nick. So we're gonna make Nick disappear into the waiting room. And Nick is now in the waiting room. Okay. Next application is On Ramp 2021 Kentner. Sally, you are first reader there. If you kick us off, thanks.
So again, I think us classical music geeks really appreciated this application. And I think the goals and everything, I can't, the goals were solid. They were laid out clearly. And they're closely defined. They're practical, and it's really clear how the project is going to drive the business at the end of the grant period. The timeline and budget also look very feasible. But because I have worked in the world of copyright for way too long, I do have some queries about copyright and conflict of interest that may potentially be going on here. And my concern is that there is an overlap between the ISO's Teddy Bear concerts and programming that Victoria created for those concerts. And then 2 pieces of work that she wants to do for her business. And my concern here is that if those 2 pieces, which are the Jungle Jam and Garden Symphony pieces, if those were created as works for hire, unless there was another contract drawn up at that point, the ISO technically owns rights to those things. So that's something I think to explore, unless you already, unless Victoria already knows the answer to that, but it's not in the grant application itself. So that conflict of interest there, it could be that rights reverted back to Victoria, but I think that should be clarified, and the way that that's going to work out should be stated in the body of the grant, so that people like me who geek out on copyright aren't worried about it. Also, there are 2 books that were created around these concerts, and I had the concern again with copyright, and if the concert pieces were based on the books, that again that there could be some licensing and royalties and things like that. And then I discovered that Victoria is writing did both the concert piece and the book under a pseudonym. So it's the same person, but that would have been useful for me to know. But again, my question is, did the books or the ISO's Teddy Bear concert shows come first? And in those cases, again, I'd be checking about work for hire, depending on how that came out. And if the books came out first and then they were used for the ISO, it could be that the ISO owes Victoria some royalties on that. The other query I've got has to do with the scenery. And again, the artist that illustrated the books is the same person who Victoria would like to hire to do her scenery. And this is where it gets really weird, in that if the artist creates illustrations to go on stage, creates stage sets, and does it as work for hire, then technically Victoria owns the rights to that, to the art in those stage sets. Again, unless she and the illustrator get this figured out between them. So there's some really messy copyright stuff going on here. Yeah, it may be that you just agree that, excuse me, that Victoria agrees that copyright reverts back to the artist when she's done and things like that. My other concern is that you don't want a personal falling out to hurt professionally. And also the last thing that anybody wants would be to have a falling out with your main employer. And in this case, the ISO. So if all this has been done as verbal agreements, I would strongly recommend getting them down on paper, because all it takes is one person leaving and a new person coming in, and there goes your verbal agreement. So just to be safe, I would strongly recommend that, that she talk to a copyright lawyer and get some of this stuff figured out. And it may have already been figured out, but it wasn't the body of the grant. So I apologize if I've gone deep down that copyright rabbit hole, but out of legal concern, I felt like I had to. Yeah, and the community engagement portion I thought was just fine. And that, it's just the copyright concerns, but otherwise, I think this is a strong project, and again, we need more of that in the world.
Thanks, Sally. Tricia, you are our next second reader.
Thing. I'm so glad that we have Sally bringing all those important things to light. As an artist, I forget about all the details all the time. So it's good to have somebody taking a look in that way. My one comment under goals would be that project summary, it seemed to me to be very from her personal point of view, which is terrific. It's short and concise, but it's not really grasping my attention. So if this is going to be the description that's posted, if you're selected to receive an award, think about how that will make your entire business or your entire venture look, and try to grab people's attention. Also, just the word programs, to me, when I read it, I think the actual program or bulletin that I get at a play or a performance. And so I thought maybe you want to use the word performance or something else there so that it's a little more on par with what you're saying. But everything else seemed very detailed, and your timeline looks wonderful, and your budget seemed well researched. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia. Any other comments? Panelists. Okay, seeing none, if you take a second, or if you have as many seconds as you need to update your scores and comments in the online system, and then we'll bring Nick back here in a few minutes. Once we're everybody in, done, scored.
Bring Nick back, but I also just wanted to, once Nick gets in here, I want to ask a question really quick. Because it looks like we're going to go just a little bit over what we asked you, the schedule, the time we asked you to block off for this. We might take another, probably, it could be 10 minutes, probably 4:10 when we officially get through all these reviews. Does anybody have a conflict, or can each of the panelists stay on until 4:10? Okay, thank you all, appreciate it. Back to you, Maya.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks for checking, Anna. Thanks everyone for being flexible. These are great discussions and so beneficial to the applicants. So really appreciate you giving us a little extra time. So is Nick back? Nick is back. Awesome. Welcome back, Nick. Our next applicant, on-ramp 2021, Mallory. Ari, you are first reader for that one.
Yeah, so this project really blew me away because I haven't even heard anything like this, and the subject matter is just so cool. So props to you for finding something like this and wanting to share these stories. I really don't have anything besides they hit every point for me. Goals, it's very clear what they're wanting to do. The feasibility, I like that they've indicated an estimated time frame. I think the applicant is right on track with that. as far as community engagement. I mean, they've provided examples of organizations and communities they have in mind to work with. So that's perfect for me. Kudos to you on this. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ari. Tricia, your second reader.
Thanks, Ari. I made a couple notes and I just have a question. The notes that we have put in the under the feedback, are those going to the applicant or no?
Yes, they will be shared.
Okay, so I'm not going to go over that because it's just a couple grammar spelling things that are not a big deal, but I think that as long as the sentence makes sense, it'll be fine. It just was a couple words that weren't quite right. So I'm just going to leave those in there and not make comments. I really liked that the previous work was given to us so we could see kind of the timeline of what's happening, or the trajectory of what's happening there. And I really, this was another one that I kind of got lost in. I would say that sometimes if we get too much content to look at, you're not sure what everybody on the panel is going to be able to have time to look at. So maybe highlight the one that you want most featured. But all of it was really good. I had a question about the donors under the budget. Who are the other major donors? I'm assuming these are previous investors and contacts. Maybe be a little more specific about that. And then what crowdfunding is being sought, and has the Kiva loan been secured? I know what all these things are, but I just wanted a little more detail about, is it something that you're applying for or you're waiting for or has already been secured? I'm also concerned about that personal contribution. I want this to be successful for you, not just, professionally successful, but also to benefit you personally. And there's a lot of personal contribution. So how about going after more money? How about asking for more funds from other places? Just be careful that you're not getting underwater as far as your own personal budget. And then I really love that the mentioning of involving other creative people and valuing their time. So often we aren't able to value other people's time as creatives, and so I'm really encouraged that that was noted and discussed in the project. I want to see how the larger community has been involved in the past so that I can see how you're going to involve them in the future. So just give us more details about how you've involved them in the past, or if you haven't, how you would like to involve them, because maybe it was missing from the project before, and that's perfectly fine too. I got to reread this sentence and make sure I said it right. All three bullet points regarding community engagement are valid. Yes, I put a question mark, but it was supposed to be a period. So all three of the bullet points to me under community engagement were valid and thought out. Thank you for that hard work. We appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks, Tricia. I'll open the floor. Any additional comments on this applicant?
I just had one comment / question that arose when I was reading it. Was just in the community engagement section. The applicant said that they're planning to use the screening of their film and working with other groups. I just didn't know if that had any budgetary concerns. So if it doesn't, that's fine. I just wasn't quite sure.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, if you would finalize your comments and scores for this applicant. All right, looks like folks are. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Next application, on-ramp 2021, no. Ari, you are our first reader for that one.
Yes, thank you. So another project that I was just like, wow. I don't listen to many audiobooks, but I know they're kind of the rave right now. So I think that's cool. Local person doing that. So yeah, as far as their goal is very clear what they're wanting to do. I like how they described the work that they do, YA supernatural fantasy series. What? So cool. As far as feasibility, even though they weren't able to narrow it down to specific times, they did seem pretty informed. So that's what I need. So I really like that. And then community engagement, it's very clear they're connected to community in each aspect of the process. So kudos to you. This sounds like great. And hopefully I'll be able to listen to the audiobook sometime.
Thanks, Ari. Sally, you are second reader on this one.
Yeah, I think the goals for the project, again, were very clear. In terms of feasibility, it's clear that our applicant did a lot of homework on what it takes to create an ebook, what it would cost, the steps that have to be gone through, and the fact that she would like to find the right narrator to do a 7-book commitment, which is a really long-term commitment. It would have been useful for me as a reader to know if the original book had been self-published, because then we get back into copyrighted contractual issues. And I did some poking around again, pardon me for going down the library rabbit hole, but I looked for the specific book in WorldCat, which is a bibliographic database that a lot of libraries in the United States and elsewhere use. I didn't find it, which tells me it was probably self-published. Also, I would strongly suggest that, because I didn't find it, that the book had not been registered with the Library of Congress. And if it had been, it would have been cataloged. And yeah, I really want to encourage authors to go ahead, get their books cataloged, get them into these online library databases, because this is how people find new books, and this is how they find new authors. And so often people will find a new book in a library, or that pops up on in their public library interface, and they'll take a chance on it. And often they'll find new readers. Well, a reader will find new authors. So I would strongly recommend our author to do the best to get our materials into libraries as another way of getting the work out there. I also, under community engagement, I like the fact that she defined her community as both an online community and potentially an in-person one as well. But the fact that she wants to engage her fan base in a two-way conversation to help choose a narrator, and to also use this as a marketing choice. So what are her fan base saying about preferences for narrator? And because she's interacting with her readers, they're no longer passive consumers, but they become active players in the creative process. So I thought that was a really incredibly strong point. But again, I would encourage her to consider building readership in person, again, by doing readings at libraries, schools, science fiction and fantasy conventions, book fairs, and that kind of thing, where she can get this book and the audio book in front of people, or the parents of people who have visual or learning impairments. So I mean, this application showed an impressive and huge amount of research. And again, I wish her the best of luck.
Thanks, Sally. Any additional comments from panelists?
I just had one comment on the budget. I saw that in their project description, they had different aspects, and I do like that they provided steps to everything. I just was a little unclear about how that relates to a timeline. Like, I guess that's the progress, but like putting some dates with those would have been helpful. And then also in that section, they have, distribution, documentation, marketing, but none of that is in the expenses. It's just the cost of the narrator. So I just love to see, if you describe it in the budget description, you put it in the expenses, even if it's just an estimate, just to make sure it's all one through line. And I don't have any questions. yeah, that was the only comment I had, but also echo how great this is. I mean, I could definitely tell the passion behind this project, which, you know, makes me feel like even though I had those questions, I'm still like confident the applicant can get all the work done.
Great, thanks, Nick. Any other comments on this one? Okay, seeing none, if you take a second to finalize your scores and comments in the online system. Now we'll move on to on-ramp 2021 Pickett. Nick, you are our first reader for that one.
Awesome. I don't have too much to say because I thought this application was really good and really straightforward, answered all of the details. I really liked how the applicant showed how this project will really connect to their long-term career goals, and you know how it relates to the budget. Like it was all really clear, making sure everything is lined up. I also really appreciated how the applicant really plans to use their current fan base. It also has plans for a book tour, really utilizing that community engagement. Some areas where I thought the applicant could have maybe changed the way that they do the budget. I think because this is a writer, they wrote the budget in a very prose way, and it's just a lot easier to read if it's at least in the project details, if it's a little like those numbers or sticks out a little more, just can be written in a little more easier way, just because it's numbers, easier for the applicant or the grant reviewer to read. And then one thing I would push the applicant to think more about is with that book tour and that workshop. I think that is great ways to do community engagement. I'm just wondering if there's ways that they can do that, not just during the book tour, so afterwards, if there's ways you can incorporate that.
Nick, Trisha, you're second reader.
Okay, this is it, friends. We agree a lot, Nick. You did a really good job of summing things up. I think the only thing I was going to add in the first section was consider explaining what a zine is. My uncle, who is about 84 and kicking, alive and kicking, does a lot of grant work, reads a lot of grant proposals, and once in a while he runs across things that he's just like, I didn't get the context. So just don't assume your audience knows exactly what you're talking about. Be specific. And that's really all there. I really enjoyed looking through your CV and your examples. And I agree with Nick about your your details, and your flow of words is so strong and passionate, and that's beautiful. But remember, when you're getting into the nitty gritty, that you give us kind of bullet points, let us see exactly where things are going to be. And I actually, I want to highlight where she talked about her plan to use her some of her budget for self-care, because she's talking about resting and recharging. I love that. I'm perfectly fine with you doing that. I wanted to know what some other people thought about that, but I also thought you might not have to tell us exactly how you're going to use it. Just rest and recharge or self-care is fine with me. And then I liked the idea of involving proofreaders and Patreon members, try to expand that beyond just those people, but into the whole community as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trisha. Throw the floor open for any additional comments on this application.
I guess I'll throw in that I like that they added self-care, because there is a growing movement of, and we've seen it with Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, Black women are saying, hey, no, we need to rest. So I love that they included that. And I don't know, I just think maybe that's like more artists should say, hey, okay, I'm also going to put this little caveat in here that we need to rest and recharge. But I don't have anything else. It was awesome.
Right. Sorry. Any other comments on this?
I just wanted to respond to the self-care thing as well. Just, I would say if you're making sure know who you're applying to, and if that's like a thing that they're going to care about. For example, if you apply for a business grant and you put self-care and cost to get a few massages through the next few months, they're likely going to be like, well, why am I paying you to get a massage? So I think just know who your audience is. But I mean, you can also just maybe word that it's just like you're paying yourself for your time and your energy, which that is a very great way to advocate for yourself in this proposal.
All right, any other comments? Otherwise, seeing none. Otherwise, if you'd finalize your comments and scores in the online system for us. Okay, well, this concludes the On-Ramp Fellowship 2021 Greater Lafayette Cohort Panel A, Media, Music, Literature, and Performing Arts. Thanks, everybody. We're going to ask our panelists if they can to hang with us for a couple of minutes, those of them who can, those of you guys who can. And then we're going to, well, first we'll usher our guests out and say thank you so much for observing the panel. We're so glad you were here to be a part of it. We're going to usher them out, and then once they've scooted out, Anna, we love to take the opportunity to capture the wisdom of the brain trust we have in front of us with panelists, and so we want to take a few